with regards to the control of the spatial direction during the focus on phase. Assuming that the thing doesn't vanish immediately, that means it's extended in time. And it is also extended in space. Easiest to understand is body sensation. You note feel. So that was the clear acknowledging. You use the word feel to indicate that you're having an emotional sensation in the body. So it has a spatial extent. May not be well defined. Typically, there will be places within a sensation that are intense and other places that are less intense. Typically, the less intense is around the border, the more intense is at the center, but it doesn't necessarily have that kind of spatial configuration. Often, you will be able to detect that in addition to the local obvious sensation, there are subtle influences that spread from that. So it could be that you get a spread that is continuous from the primary, but more frequently, you get sort of like a little ping here, a little ping there, a little ping there. Or you may not be aware of any spread at all. So there is a spatial configuration. Once again, I emphasize it may not be well defined for you. That's okay, but there is an extent in space of that sensory event. Easiest to conceptualize with touch and feel, but actually all the sensory categories that were sung about in that song can have a spatial extent to them. In time, for several seconds, you're going to be intently focusing on that category you've acknowledged. Default means what you fall back on, all other factors being equal, right? Default with regards to how you control attention within the spatial scope of the thing you've acknowledged is not to control the attention. However, you do have the option, if it seems appropriate, useful, to in fact control your attention for those few seconds with regards to direction and spatial extent. If you focus intentionally on a small part of the phenomenon, we'll say that you're zooming in, just to have a word for that. Often, you'll be zooming in on small, weak parts of body sensations to deal with intensities, like pain or intense emotions. So it's got a local intensity here, but it's around the perimeter, it's a little less intense. You zoom into a little piece of the perimeter and see, I can, for these few seconds that I'm intently focusing, it's just that one little volume. For just these few seconds, maybe it will be easier to completely open up to that than to deal with the whole phenomenon. So that's zooming in. Zooming out means that you spread your attention broadly at some extent, maybe over the whole sensation or as widely as you can detect the sensation. So you're trying to sort of encompass the whole thing. And that also can sometimes dissipate intensity, because it's sort of like the laws of in physical chemistry, pressure is inversely proportional to volume. So if you sort of give it volume, you can you may find that helpful. So that's zooming out, zooming in. The name is to zoom in and out at the same time. So what does that mean? You would typically do that with something that is intense, typically a body sensation. The zoom in this case means you intentionally go to the most intense part you can find. And the zoom out in this case means you simultaneously spread your awareness as broadly as you can through the body. I can explain why you might want to do it. However, that's not the same as to say that you should ever do this ever in your practice. Remember, the default is not to control. This is true for all sensory phenomena, but particularly true for body sensation. Sensory phenomena tend to have a local impact and a global spread. Let's assume that there is spread. We won't be concerned with whether it's detectable or not. We'll just assume that it's spreading, perhaps below the threshold of awareness. If you go local and at the same time spread your attention over the whole body, that tends to grease the rails for the spread to occur without resistance. Most of the suffering is not in local intensities. Most of the suffering is in the resistance to the subtle spread, particularly the resistance to the spread that is below the threshold of awareness. And it's resistance to very, very, very tiny sensations. So tiny that the surface consciousness is not aware of them. The resistance to the subtle spread through the body until it's been trained away is huge. And those tiny little sensations catch in the sort of the gears of the nervous system. And that's why people's bodies shake and so forth. And that's actually where most of the suffering is. So zooming in and out at the same time will tend to facilitate the spread, even if you're not in any way conscious of the spread. So that can help. Zooming in and out at the same time means that if it's done with regards to the body, which typically is where it is done, although it works with image and talk, believe it or not, also, but that's much subtler. Zooming in and out at the same time, with time, will lead to a kind of experience of splash, ripple through the body, radiate beyond the body into the infinity of space, and dissipate. You'll tend to get that rhythm, okay? Splash, ripple, filling the body, then radiation out, and release. Very much like the physics of a raindrop falling into a pond. There's a certain amount of potential energy. That potential energy is converted into kinetic energy as the raindrop falls, hits the pond. Where's that energy going? That potential energy, okay? It's now going into a plop, a ripple, okay? But then the ripples die away. What happened to the energy that was in the ripples? Well, it's partially sound, but then when the sound, okay, sound is just the air rippling. You got the water rippling. But what happens to the sound and the ripples in the water? There's no loss of energy. Conservation of energy, basic principle of physics. Where did that energy go? It's in electromagnetic radiation in the infrared, which means in heat. And that travels at the speed of light and fills the entire universe. And in a tiny, 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 tiny way, warms the farthest galaxies and can never be retrieved. Basic principles of entropy. That potential energy that was in that raindrop is gone, gone, gone. It's gone, okay? You have to go against the gradient of entropy, which the universe doesn't work that way, in order to recreate that potential energy. So what that means is that each thing that arises within us is, if we experience it something along the lines that I'm describing, takes on the taste of purification, which is the taste that that quantum of potential for suffering has been released within us forever. The zoom in, zoom out tends to facilitate, at the same time, tends to facilitate that process. That's the good news. However, until that taste of purification comes on, because you're not in any way fighting, you're giving your whole body, consciously or unconsciously, you're giving your whole body to the sensation. That means there's only so much real estate in consciousness, there may not be much room for the mind. And that leads, because we use the mind as the ordinary ordering principle, you might have the impression that you're losing control, but you're not. You're in an ordering principle that's so primordial it could never be disordered, but it might take you a little while to realize that. So the zoom in, zoom out may initially give you a sense of overwhelm and loss of control, but if you can just hang with that, that other flavor will come on. And so that's that option, okay? So I warned you subtlety and complexity ahead. So that was the subtlety and complexity. If you never use this, that's fine.